is the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the second Celebrity Afterlife Report for 2017. As I mentioned last week, there have been a lot of new arrivals in the next world recently. This week's show, we have updates about a few of those we talked about on the last report. As you know, if you listened to this show in the past, there's always things going on with the next world celebrity scene. That's what we're here every week to talk about. So strap in as we get started on this week's Scoops. On last week's show, probably the biggest arrivals we talked about were Carrie Fisher and her mother, Debbie Reynolds. As you undoubtedly know, they transitioned from the earthly plane a day apart and arrived in their new existences almost simultaneously. There was a huge crowd waiting to greet them upon their arrival, and mother and daughter were, as you'd expect, excited to be reunited. At the time I reported on their arrival, I wondered if the duo would be working together sometime soon, something I'm sure was on the minds of many at their arrival ceremony. I can now tell you that the answer to that question is yes! According to several sources, it was announced over the past weekend that Carrie and Debbie will be the permanent co-hosts of a new TV show called The Girls. The concept has been described to me as being pretty much like The View, which of course is a staple of earthly plane daytime TV and has been for years now. On the show, Carrie, Debbie, and other women who will rotate on a weekly basis will discuss current events and anything else on their minds. The announcement of the new show was made at a press conference. One member of the press asked Fisher and Reynolds if the name The Girls wasn't perhaps somewhat sexist. Carrie laughed and said, "Are you crapping me?" Except she didn't say crapping. "I made up the name," she explained. "It's, ironic." "See why it's never been easy to be her mother," Debbie said to laughter from the press in attendance. Oh, interesting side note. The show is being executive produced by Gary Marshall, the man who created Mork and Mindy and Happy Days. Now, when we last heard from Gary, he was assuming the role of creative director of the all-canine cable channel created by Rudd Weatherwax, the man behind the Lassie movies and TV show. Now, if this new job means that Gary has left that position, I do not know yet, but I am working on finding out. On last week's show, we also talked about Zsa Zsa Gabor arriving in the afterlife. No sooner had she gotten there when she was reunited with her sister Ava, the former star of Green Acres. After their tear-filled reunion, Ava invited Zsa Zsa to come live in the house next to hers. And we found out after she gave her that invitation that Ava has been living in Trump City, the all-white community owned and run by Fred Trump, father of President-elect Donald Trump. Now, I've since been informed that Zsa Zsa has taken her sister up on the invite, and the two are now living in adjoining houses on Freedom Boulevard, the main drag through the center of Trump City. Now, the question on the minds of many in the next world, as well as on my mind too, is whether the Gabor sisters understand exactly what kind of community they are living in, and if so, do they endorse Fred Trump's controversial policies? Now, while we don't know the answer to those questions yet, we do know that there are some parallels in the situation to what Trump Sr.'s son is going through on the earthly plane. You are probably aware that Donald has been having trouble finding A-list celebs willing to perform at his inauguration, to say the least. Similarly, Fred has reportedly been trying to recruit big names to move to Trump City. According to my sources, however, he's been getting shot down left and right, just like his son. Word is that Fred would like to have well-known celebs move there to counter the criticism that he has, gotten over his apartheid policies. But from what I've been told, so far the Gabors are the only names he's been able to get, and I wouldn't describe them as A-list. Also, on last week's show, I told you about Alan Thicke's arrival in the afterlife. Almost immediately after he was welcomed to his new existence, Alan was asked by a reporter if he had any plans for showbiz work in the future. Now, I have to say, I really dislike when new arrivals get ambushed like that. You know, they've just come to a place unlike any they've ever experienced before, and they're often disoriented. I really think it's kind of unfair for someone to just go, hey, so what are you planning? They don't know what they're planning. They just got there. Anyway, having said that, Alan was quick with a response. He said he would like to revive his old late-night talk show, Thicke of the Night, which, although touted as the show that was going to knock Johnny Carson off his throne, lasted only a little over a year in the air. Thanks to my next well contacts, I can report to you that he is as good as his word. Not only is Thicke of the Night going to be back on the air in the afterlife, Alan's first guest has already been announced. You may have guessed that it is going to be the aforementioned Johnny Carson. Carson has been out of the spotlight since his transition to the next world, but he is making an exception for the premiere broadcast by his erstwhile rival. I just have a feeling, you know, I've been on this beat for a while. I have a feeling that this appearance may be noteworthy in one way or another. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this story as the air date approaches. Lastly, we've known for over a week now, actually, that Florence Henderson has agreed to co-star on a new sitcom with her former Brady Bunch hubby, Robert Reed. Reed approached her when she arrived in the afterlife with the concept of a show about a woman who is married to a gay man. And as you may or may not know, Robert Reed is actually gay. Florence loved the idea and agreed to work on it with him immediately. We don't know all the details yet, but we do know that the premise is kind of a Three's Company in reverse. On that show, John Ritter, of course, played a guy who had to pretend to be gay so that his landlord wouldn't object to his living with two women. Reed, apparently, is going to play a character who pretends to be straight to stay with his woman, to whom he may or may not be legally married. Now, that part is unclear at this stage, as are all other details about the show, including who might be in the supporting cast. Now, Paul Lynde's name has been mentioned in connection with the project, but that is unconfirmed at this point. Okay, it's time to lock up the Celebrity Afterlife Report studio for another week. Please come back next week when I'll have another roundup of the latest gossip about all your favorite celebs. Please, 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 please help spread the word about the show by telling your friends. It can be found on iTunes, in the Google Play Store, and on K-Chung Radio, 1630 in Los Angeles. I'm the Celebrity Medium. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast. To ask a question about your favorite deceased celebrity, call 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-369-3732.